Apple Card is a perfect card for your holiday shopping. You can apply on your iPhone in minutes and start using it right away. You'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Start holiday shopping for your friends and family today with Apple Card. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. Apple Card is a perfect card for your holiday shopping. You can apply on your iPhone in minutes and start using it right away. You'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Start holiday shopping for your friends and family today with Apple Card. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. You're listening to Well Now, Slate's podcast on health and wellness. I'm Kavita Patel.
And I'm Maya Feller. For many, the holiday season is a joyful time to make memories with friends and family, but it's also a period of high stress, which can trigger dangerous ways to cope, especially for people with substance use disorder. Substance dependence and addiction are complex and challenging. The person who's struggling with addiction isn't alone in the turmoil. Their struggle deeply impacts loved ones and society at large.
Addiction is a public health crisis. The National Institute on Drug Abuse reported in 2020 that 40 million people in the United States had substance use disorder, and of those, only 6.5% received treatment. And in 2021, more than 100,000 people died of drug overdoses.
Wow, those are really staggering numbers, Kavita. And as of this taping, the U.S. is in the midst of an opioid overdose epidemic. There's an actual public health alert in effect from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The numbers are staggering, and the lack of accessible treatment is disheartening. Kavita, tell me about your professional experience with patients who've struggled with substance use disorder.
I think that my experience mirrors what the United States statistics show, that there are far more people that either have a diagnosis or meet the criteria for a diagnosis, but a very small fraction have received treatment. And that's partly because treatment can be complicated. I think there used to be, if you'll recall, Maya, the old days of, basically like quitting cold turkey, just say no. I mean, it took probably a couple of decades to realize that doesn't work for different substances and for most disorders. So it's hard to kind of talk about like the professional part of this without also reflecting on how poor our treatment options have been. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but mirrors the statistics that we talk about. What has your experience been taking care of patients with substance use disorders?
Yeah, so I've found that in my work, it's really interdisciplinary and that there's a whole bunch that needs to happen when we work with someone. I will say that it is really costly when it's done well. And because it includes everything from like experiential recovery work. So like literally being outside in nature, building structures with people's hands, or like digging holes, being in therapy, learning cooking skills, nutrition basics, like all of the things that we need to be a healthy person with coping skills. And the truth is, I really have not seen many public or free therapeutic models like this for youth or adults. The safety nets are super inadequate and often non-existent. I mean, Kavita, what do you feel like is needed to address this national epidemic?
I mean, I think that the solutions are in front of us. We just don't act on them, meaning there are lots of policy proposals to really try to put money into community-based treatments and community-based therapies, to your point about models for youth, adults, for anybody. So that's one, kind of actually putting some resources into the infrastructure to create, or even virtual infrastructure to create this access. And then two, I think is unfortunately, we don't have a workforce. So a lot of substance use disorders end up getting either initially turfed to psychiatry or to specialists, of which we don't have enough. And then I think third, to your point, that if you're in a safety net, like Medicaid insurance or kind of what I would call like less generous health insurance coverage, then some of this, the copays are so high, the out-of-pocket costs are so high. So you need a little bit of protection to know that you can treat this. And then I would say finally, kind of the age-old issue is stigma. So I think it's just unfortunate that Yet still 2024, there is an incredible amount of stigma, and substances, I think traditionally in the past have been like, people think of it like, so for example, alcohol or quote unquote hard drugs. And now it's really, we see it's a spectrum. You can have a substance use disorder. And we talked about this with cannabis. So I think there's like a very large opportunity to destigmatize, but it also then takes an equally large opportunity to resource and create that infrastructure. So Maya, let's bring someone else into this conversation who's made it his mission to provide adequate support for people with substance use disorders. Stay tuned.
Hey, Well Now listeners, if you're enjoying the show and want to hear more, subscribe to our feed. New episodes come out every Wednesday morning. While you're there, check out our other episodes too, like last week's about the research and the lack thereof surrounding menopause. Check it out.
Apple Card is a perfect card for your holiday shopping. You can apply on your iPhone in minutes and start using it right away. You'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Start holiday shopping for your friends and family today with Apple Card. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Your metabolism is your body's engine, so optimizing your metabolic health translates to easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Introducing Lumen, the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. When I used Lumen, I breathed into it before I exercised, and it was really interesting. I found that I was burning mostly carbohydrates. And then when I would breathe into it after exercising, I found that I was burning mostly fats. I thought it was fascinating because I actually never knew when I worked out what my body's fuel source was. So if you want to stay on track with your health this holiday season, go to lumen.me/wellnow to get 15% off your Lumen. That is lumen.me/wellnow for 15% off your purchase. Lumen makes a great gift too. Welcome back. You're listening to Well Now from Slate. I'm Maya Feller.
And I'm Kavita Patel. To help us dive deeper into the nuances of substance abuse, we welcome Zac Clark. Many reality TV fans remember him when he was a contestant on The Bachelorette back in 2020. While on a date with the show's lead, Tayshia Adams, he opened up about his history with substance abuse.
At that point, I'm drinking and doing drugs and just partying, just totally being selfish.
Yeah.
I was hanging out with some sketchy people. It wasn't pretty. I got arrested, got a DUI, and my wife left me. She's like, this is over. And then for the next 8 months, it got pretty gnarly. I was in a bad way. Scary.
Really dark place.
Yeah, it was touch and go. Moments of I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it to tomorrow kind of stuff. Because I was just
that deep.
I was hopeless.
Zac's now a renowned addiction recovery advocate and the founder and CEO of Release Recovery, an addiction treatment center based here in New York City. Zac, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Anytime I get to wake up and talk about stuff that I love talking about is a gift.
Amen to that. So, Zac, when we start our episodes, we always ask each guest the same question. We've compiled quite interesting answers. And the question is, how do you define wellness?
How do I define wellness? It's a great question. I love that. And I think we probably all should be thinking about that right now. it's a holistic thing, you know. For me, wellness is mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. And when all those four things are kind of in line and walking hand in hand, it seems that I am genuinely a happier person. So I would define wellness as, for me, when I am well, I am happy. And I have joy in my life. When I am not well, I'm most likely sad or depressed or overthinking something about myself.
Yeah. It's that connection to truly like, how do you really feel? You know, when people ask you that, you're like, no, really, how do you feel? And so, Zac, as someone who's spent years publicly talking about their journey with substance use disorder, what are some of the more common misconceptions you've encountered surrounding addiction and recovery?
Well, we're making progress. I mean, I can share, yesterday I was honored by a hospital system up in Westchester County, so just north of New York City. Shout out St. Vincent's and St. Joseph's. They do amazing work. And, one of the things that I always do when I have an opportunity to address a room and tell my story is they read the introduction just like you guys did. And I said, that stuff's all great, but the most important thing about me is that I'm a heroin addict and I'm a crack cocaine addict and I'm in recovery. And I didn't get kicked out of the room. No one walked away. They actually leaned in a little bit closer because I think I got their attention. And so, those words, heroin, crack, in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, I think were really dirty words and highly stigmatized. And I think by talking about substance abuse disorder, changing some of the language, and just behavioral healthcare in general, by talking about it, I think that we are making progress, but there is still a tremendous amount of stigma when someone says they are in recovery. And a lot of times it's just the person receiving that information or doesn't know how to react to that.
That's the truth.
It's
scary, right? Because it's like the person listening has to realize that you're human, they're human, and that this is something that can touch everyone. It's not just like they look at you and you're, the way that you present is very high functioning, right? Coming from a really good background. And yet this was your experience. So that's hard to grapple with for folks.
And by the way, I mean, if you have personal experience where maybe you've lived with someone who was in the throes of addictions for 10 years and you experienced emotional abuse or even physical abuse, I am very in tune with the fact that they don't give a shit what I have to say or how I'm trying to change stigma. Their lived experience, their trauma is that the association they have in their life is that this is a bad thing. And they throw a blanket over to say anyone who is a drug addict is a bad person. Now, if someone has cancer, I don't think the same sentiment is being shared.
Agreed. What is so incredible is that you've been really honest about your recovery as being nonlinear, right? Like everybody loves to do progress and be better. So in 2020, you talk about how you went to rehab for the first time. And in your words, I listened to you say you were forced into it and that you weren't ready. And that when you came out, you returned immediately to doing drugs. Could you share with us a little bit about that time in your life and why it was so challenging to receive support specifically at that moment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, so I got sober in August of 2011. So I have 13 years doing this every day, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. The first time I went to rehab was I know I spent 2 Thanksgivings in a row in rehab. That's like, I just remember that so vividly. So it was probably late October of 2010, I entered into treatment for the first time. And I didn't really know what I was walking into. And it was, I really had this vision of Sandra Bullock's 28 Days in my mind where like, I'm going to go to this happy farm and meet some interesting folks and I'm going to get out and, be healed. I very quickly realized that a lot of what I've been doing my entire life for those first 27 years was going to work in rehab, which is I was going to tell people what they wanted to hear. And I was going to be a chameleon. And maybe if I was a leader of the pack, I could, I put it on my resume when I left rehab, like I was the best rehab patient ever, but there was a lack of willingness and education and understanding around really what I was dealing with, which was a pretty significant substance use disorder that I had a predisposition to, and was exacerbated by the fact that I had a brain tumor and I was put on opioids and all the things, right? And so I just wasn't ready. And I got out of that program and I was clean for probably, 7 to 14 days. And I always say, like, women saved my life. My mother saved my life. My sister saved my life. My ex-wife saved my life, right? Because they were the ones that were strong enough to kind of call me on my shit and also hold boundaries. And so I got high again quickly after that first treatment episode, and then went on to what I like to say is like kind of rip and run for 8 months, which got me to August of 2011. And so, but this is a long time ago now.
Very long time ago.
We've come a long way.
Yeah.
We've come a long way, Zac, but you talk a little bit about the women in your life. You've actually talked about a bank teller, Rhonda Jackson, who called your dad instead of calling the police. And it feels like that was, again, one of maybe the tribe of women who really created a safety net for you. But it was a tipping point, right, Zac? And can you just take listeners and describe the events that were happening around that tipping point and kind of how much Rhonda meant to you in retrospect?
Yeah, I mean, look, Rhonda, and I don't know that I've ever really spoke so openly about what she did for me in that moment, but she allowed me to see humans. And like, if I'm being really real, like, this is the truth. I grew up in Haddonfield, New Jersey, which is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant town. I did not have a lot of Jewish friends. I did not have a lot of Black friends. I was not, it's part of why I fell in love with New York City, because I was like, holy shit, we got it here. Like, I can see all my people. Like, my first best friend in New York City was like a 58-year-old gay man that I met, and I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I'm missing out on this whole life. But I credit Rhonda with that open-mindedness because, and I guess I'll get to that point, but to answer your question, Kavita, late August 2011, I am intravenously using heroin. I am smoking cocaine crack out of a pipe. I am still very much able to call on parents for help if I want to, but I am choosing to sleep on a cardboard box and live this kind of drug-addicted life. And I had been arrested, and I spent a few nights doing that. And I basically, what happened was, and this story still gives me goosebumps, I broke into my dad's office. And I've told it a million times. I broke into my dad's office. I stole a check. I wrote out a check in my name. I signed my dad's really bad signature, which everyone in the family jokes like we knew how to sign because it was just basically a scribbled line. I walked into the bank, PNC Bank. It was Friday or Saturday morning. I had two drug dealers, Dog and Bro. I still remember their names, sitting outside. We were going to go pull some tricks if we were able to get this $5,000. And I walked up to this desk, and there was Rhonda Jackson. She was an African-American woman. She looked me in the eye. She saw me. Like, she really saw me. I feel like we have a problem in our world right now where we're not seeing each other. We're really not. I just walked out of the bathroom here at the studio, and I looked left and right, and I was like, I don't even know which way to go because I wasn't paying attention because my face was just in my phone. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, right? And so she saw me, and she had three choices. She could have called the cops. She could have called her manager, or she could have called my dad. And she called my dad, and my dad came racing down to the bank within 15 or 20 minutes, and I kind of sat there waiting for the money to come, and it never came. And my dad came in, and I always kind of say, like, I'm speaking today with two very smart humans. Both of you have really built amazing careers for yourself, and you're experts on the topics that you know about and share about, and you can hold your own in many rooms. But my life was not saved by a psychologist, a therapist, by a sponsor in AA, by my mom or dad. It was saved by a bank teller who was kind.
And just to follow up, a bank teller who was kind, who made maybe minimum wage at that. And I'm a doctor, Zac, so I'm here for all the health system fails people. I fail people a lot, and it's the human connectedness that actually saves us. So not shocked at all, and grateful that Rhonda Jackson exists, that all the women in your life exist, and really here for it. So thank you.
Yeah, and I've taken that relationship seriously. Like I've stayed in touch with her. Like I've connected. I've cultivated a real like. I didn't use her for that moment. Like she's someone that I very much still can text and go hang out and take out for coffee when I am back home in South Jersey. And my father, I know, is still in touch with her. And just one of those beautiful stories that gives us a little bit of hope in life. And I talk about it all the time. Like you talk about connection, Kavita, and you see it in the healthcare system. Like the thing I don't think we've hit on enough, especially in the recent political landscape, is like this idea that we're in a loneliness epidemic. People are alone.
Totally. Oh my God. Yeah.
Big time.
And lonely even when they're surrounded by social media screens, probably more lonely with that than ever before.
Yep. Zac, before you said something interesting about the lived experience of people, and that's something that Kavita and I think a lot about with the populations that we take care of. And I do some interdisciplinary work where I'm working with people who have substance use disorder. And so I go in for the nutrition component.
So good. So good to hear that. Keep going.
And it's incredible because one of the things that we see is not only does the work need to be interdisciplinary to really hold the person, not only do we have to absolutely see them, we have to want to be there as much as well. Like I always say, like we have to be all in the treatment because it's not linear, as you know personally. What do you, in your lived experience, right? When do you feel like, and we're going to talk more about this after the break, but when do you feel like people are ready for recovery?
I'm going to answer that question, but I'm fixating on the fact that you work with people in substance abuse because lived experience, behavioral health care, our system, some of the failures. When I went to rehab, and still when people go to rehab, they say a lot of times, okay, stop doing drugs.
Right.
Here's maybe another drug to help with that drug. And I don't have a problem with medications as long as they are, properly diagnosed and we have a proper assessment. But also, like, it's okay to start smoking cigarettes and eat a pint of ice cream a day as long as you're not doing drugs. And I'm like, what are we teaching here? Like, that's going to kill them too.
It sure will. It sure will.
So my dream in behavioral healthcare is that like you guys talked about that word wellness off the jump. And it's like, are we really promoting wellness at these facilities? And, I guess to piggyback onto your actual question, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping, but that just really struck a nerve because I feel like so much of my recovery has been paying attention and being mindful of what I'm putting in my body, how I'm treating my body and my mind. So I digress. When are people ready? I don't know. When the universe says they're ready. I was just on a phone with a mom this morning and she was, struggling with, one of her kids. And I just said, like, look, this could happen tomorrow. This could happen in 3 months. This might happen in 6 months. I don't know when we're going to get him to get the help that you want him to get. But like, we have certain things that we can do and teach you to help that process along. If it was as easy as walking into a room and saying, hey, you need to get help, let's go. And the person would say just fine. Okay. I also think it's interesting that people are so caught up on this idea in substance abuse treatment that, willingness plays a role in the outcome. It doesn't. We actually have some things out there that tell us that the willingness of someone entering into a behavioral health care program has no bearing on the outcome. I've seen people go in there doing jumping jacks and I want to get better, die of an overdose. And I've seen people that fight and finally get in there and surrender and are many years sober. So.
It's amazing. It's so true. There's no one description, one size, one characteristic. It's just like people. Each one is unique with their own journey.
I think I'm biased, but behavioral healthcare workers have to have thick skin because like our outcomes are not going to be 10 for 10. And like, there's no
Amen.
Playbook. We know some things. We have some data. We have an understanding of a couple things at work, but like I've been yelled at by families.
Oh, of course.
You know, like,
oh my goodness, you struck a nerve with me. I have totally been yelled at by families. Oh my gosh, Zach, you don't. Yes, you know.
I love it, Maya. You got Maya excited. There we go. It's the right time to take a break. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll hear more from Zac Clark on addiction and recovery. Stay tuned. Apple Card is a perfect card for your holiday shopping. You can apply on your iPhone in minutes and start using it right away. You'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Start holiday shopping for your friends and family today with Apple Card. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Is it time to reimagine your future? The right business skills may make a difference in your career. At Capella University, we offer a relevant education that's designed to focus on what you need to know in the business world. We'll teach professional skills to help you pursue your goals, like business management, strategic planning, and effective communication. And you can apply these skills right away. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
You're listening to Well Now from Slate. I'm Kavita Patel.
And I'm Maya Feller. We're continuing our conversation with Zac Clark, founder and CEO of Release Recovery.
All right, Zac, the holiday season is approaching. For many of us, that brings on even more stress and dangerous ways to cope with it, such as abusing drugs and alcohol. How are you planning to navigate holidays, or how have you navigated them in the past, as well as other settings where you know there's likely to be an environment of excessive substance use?
For me, and this is for me, and I'm going to keep it on my recovery is not about what I gave up, it's what I've gained, right? And so for me, it's like I'm like indifferent to alcohol, drugs. If there's people that are drunk, I can go to bed. Like I know that I've taken a lot of my power back. So the holidays for me are not so challenging. I will say that in my work, there are two classes of kind of people that we are trying to work with, right? It's our clients and our families. For the clients, what we try to tell them is be honest. If you're 3, 6, 8, 12 months into your recovery process and you don't want to go home for this holiday, giving up one Thanksgiving to have the next 50 is definitely a nice trade. If you do choose to go home, then like you have the ability to use your voice. And so some people will say, I'm going home and I don't want my family to have alcohol around. And my hope is that the family will then honor that. Some people will go home, like I did at 6 months, and said, please do not change your behavior. That's only going to make me feel worse about like this last 10 years of chaos that I put you through. I already feel enough shame. So to tell you guys on Thanksgiving that you can't have a glass of wine doesn't feel good to me. That's actually going to drive me closer to a drink than the alternative. For the families, it's about listening and having the conversation to the person that's coming home. If they're coming home for the first time, I would not suggest like running all around and locking up the liquor and like trying to make this like, because they're going to walk into that home and they're like, what's going on here? Like, this doesn't feel like home. Unless they say to you and you have a conversation, I would encourage you to have the conversation. Hey, I'd really appreciate it if the booze is put away. That's going to be really triggering for me. So honoring the communication Because what that does is it takes the responsibility off the family, and it takes the responsibility off the identified patient, and hopefully it creates an environment that is healthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now what about the folks, the trusted adults, the extended family, the people that love the folks that are experiencing substance use disorder? How can they best offer their support at this time? And I say that with the caveat, understanding that we're not trying to make this monolithic, that it's going to be different for everyone. But there are a few things that folks can think about in the reframe. What would you offer?
I would just say that as someone who's been home for many holidays, I just want to be treated like the rest of the folks there. I really do. Like, the last thing I want is for my uncle or cousin or someone to look at me like I am some kind of black sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And so to the energy that it's like, be yourself. Be yourself. And like, sure, maybe there's a little extra awareness. If you know that you're going to be around someone who's in recovery for the first time, like, maybe read a little bit or have some level of compassion or understanding for them, but like really knowing that really what that person wants is to just feel a part of. And this is a lot of the stigma work that I do and a lot of the advocacy work I do. I think that society has failed us with people in recovery because we want to pigeonhole them. I mean, I even go two ways with the whole NA push and like, yeah, let's silo this place at the bar where they don't serve booze. I'm like, I don't really think that's what we want. Like, we don't want to be siloed from the rest of the world. We want to be a part of.
Right. I've heard you talk about resilience in your current work. And I have to personally say that I really do love conversations around resilience because they're hopeful. And I like to be hopeful. I really do. In your lived experience and also your experience working with a wide variety of families, what does resilience, specifically in the context of substance dependence, mean to you?
Some people that have been addicted to drugs. I mean, we are the most resilient. I always say if I start doing drugs again, I won't die right away. I will go mess a lot of stuff up and then, we'll see what happens. But like, I'm resilient. So look, that word is one that really resonates with me. It's this interesting thing as I do some more of my own therapy and my own self-development work and really try to understand why I am the way I am. I know that a lot of it leads back to my childhood, and it wasn't a bad childhood. I know that a lot of it leads back to the way I was raised. Not bad. Great, actually, but still. And I'm grateful to now have done some therapy and some trauma work and some exposure work where I'm like, oh, that's why I need to win. That's why I am so competitive. That's why I am so sensitive. And a lot of those things have served me for many, many years, and given me some of my resilience. So as it pertains to, I will keep it on me because I will talk about me because I don't like to talk about other people. When I am using drugs, there is nothing more important than that. It is my daily medication. So when I talk to parents and they don't understand why their son was in their top drawer stealing money, I say to them, because that's their medicine.
Mm-hmm.
They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about, how do I feel better? How do I quiet this sound in my mind and this feeling in my body? And that's where a lot of my resilience came from. I mean, the Rhonda Jackson story is a great one. Breaking into my dad's office, stealing a check from a man that I love and making it out to myself wasn't anything other than a resilient act to try and stay high for one more day.
Mm-hmm.
And so then after living like that and coming out on the other side, the hope is that a lot of those behaviors translate to my recovery so that I'm willing to do the therapy and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. The same thing that I was willing to do to get high, I'm also willing to do to stay sober.
I appreciate how you called out or pulled out the using the substance to feel good. And What I feel like sometimes in society that people really miss the mark on is this understanding, like they assume that everyone's okay, right? Like we're all meant to be okay, but we all have deficits and we all have ways that we cope. Some are productive and some are incredibly harmful. And so it makes me think so much about the youth and kids, this idea of what fits into that receptor and creates the pleasure, and how do you reroute it so it's these positive, resilient behaviors as opposed to the ones that are just so dangerous and so harmful.
And I'll just say, as I think about that quick, is like, yes, we're all human. Yes, we all have warts. I always say, like, we all have something. Like, show me the person that hasn't struggled with one of the following: sex, food, drugs,
Facts.
You know, whatever it is, disassociating in some way, video games, gambling. Like, no one is perfect. I always say, like, Tom Brady, this dude's like winning 7 Super. Like, there's something there.
100%. 100%. And we've talked to athletes, right? And there is a way that they put that resilience into the excellent achievement. It's just socially acceptable that they break their bodies into pieces to win. We're all like, that's fine. So you're totally right. There is something. I've heard you talk about the family structure. You talk about, you know, you loved your dad, your mom, your ex-wife. This always touches people in the larger circles. What do you feel like people need to be aware of when they're supporting someone who's going through recovery? And like, how can families and friends trust someone who's in crisis?
Well, I mean, the first thing, and this is not an advertisement for me, but it's an I mean, like, if you have someone that is struggling, you need to get your ass out of that and just be that person and hire a professional in some way, shape, or form. Like, get a doctor, get a therapist, get someone involved that's not going to see it so emotionally. Right? Like, when my oldest brother, Rob, who's now 60, was in it, like, I had this experience where I had him in a treatment program and I was doing the family calls every week, and they stopped and they said, Zach, what would it look like for you to just be the brother here and not the CEO? And that stuck with me, because when families and friends are in the middle of this thing, it is so, so hard. The lies, the behaviors, none of which they want to believe are true. The emotional attachment is just so severe. And so when I sit with families and I sit with loved ones, I say, look, like, as silly as it sounds, it's like the airplane. You got to put your oxygen mask on first. You got to take care of yourself. The more work you do on yourself to not be reactive, to set boundaries with love, to just let them be seen, they are going to see that and they're going to feel that, and they're going to be more willing to come to a place where they're actually ready to get honest and maybe ask for some help. But it's so hard.
It's super hard.
I mean, it's almost impossible.
Can you talk to us about holding the boundary with love? I love that statement.
So there's like certain words in my world that I hate. Like, I hate the word relapse. Like, I don't know where that came from, but it's like, there's something that really bothers me about, like, I have 13 years sober. If I was to go out and drink beer tomorrow, which I don't plan on, because my recovery is very important to me, I would essentially relapse. And this word would label me, and people would ridicule me, and they would say whatever they want to say. But, like, does that discredit the last 13 years of work I've done?
Absolutely not.
That's what I'm going to tell myself, though. And that's what the world's going to tell me, is that I'm a failure. Right? And so boundary is another word that I struggle with, because it's like, I'm never going to tell a mother that their son can't sleep in their home. Like, I'm never going to tell a mom, you have to kick your kid out, because I'm not a mother. And I don't know what that feels like. And I am going to try to hopefully teach that mom to say to that son, hey, I love you. I'm really scared. I'm having a hard time understanding this behavior. I can't continue to give you money or whatever this other thing is that I'm doing, because I need to protect myself. And when you are willing or ready for some help, I am here for you. And there's just language that no one, like, it's like, that's language that I've learned over 13 years. So like to expect a mother in the middle of the chaos to know that is hard. And that's why we're so passionate about prevention and education and getting to the family systems early so that they can start to practice this stuff and really have conversations in the home that are, that show their children when it does come time to ask for help, whether it be with a substance use disorder, an eating disorder, a dating relationship, whatever it is, they feel comfortable to say, hey, Mom, like, can I talk to you in an open way? And a lot of our households in America have lost that.
Zach, you founded Release Recovery, and I think this builds on just everything you didn't have. But can you tell us how your program is redefining everything you just described and what's unique about it?
I actually don't know that there's anything unique. I think we actually go back to the basics with a lot of it. Like psychology, what is community, right? How are we connecting as humans? And again, like, I work with really smart doctors and really smart psychiatrists and really smart therapists, all of whom, have done incredible work in this world. However, like, are we really taking the holistic approach? Are we really trying to create an environment for our clients and for our families that mimics something that feels really safe and healthy? Because many of them have not had that growing up.
Right.
I always say, like, your traumas are your traumas, your problems are your problems. It's very easy to look at the trust fund kid in New York that's had a maid, making his breakfast and his bed and cleaning up after him for 18 years or 19 years and say, dude, how did you end up so screwed up?
Right.
Well, my maid was my mother. I didn't have a mom. My mom paid someone to be my mom. Oh. And so training our staff to understand that, knowing that this trust fund kid most likely has more money than all of our staff combined.
Right.
And the person making $22 an hour, $25 an hour is like, why should I care about this person? And so to answer your question, Kavita, I mean, look, we've done a nice job. We have 64 residential beds throughout Westchester County and New York City. We really focus on community. We focus on not having the answers, but presenting options to our clients and our families. Yes, we have to hold them accountable. Yes, we try to teach them like these activities of daily living that are oftentimes forgotten. Like one of the things that I'm really passionate about at our residential programs is at 5:30 every night we get together and we have dinner. Because a lot of these folks are coming from homes or places where there was no family dinner for whatever reason. And so trying to mimic some of these things that we're losing in the world, and then replacing, the drugs and the alcohol with other behaviors. So that's community, that's connection, that's, going for a run, that's movement, that's eating well, not maybe not the Haagen-Dazs and the pack of Marlboro Reds. Like maybe we should look at that too while we're at it. And so, structure, accountability, community, really good clinical partnership. We just opened a clinic up in Purchase, New York, north of the city, and I hired a chief medical officer. And so we keep evolving and growing, but it goes back to our core principles around just like treat people right, be kind, build community, make people see people like Rhonda saw me.
How can we extend that to society a little bit? I'm a little worried about you taking away my Haagen-Dazs, but I can live with it. But how do we create a society, and especially, Zach, as we're recording this means a lot. How can we be more compassionate to thinking about each other and especially substance use and recovery?
I think it comes back to if you knew my story, you wouldn't be mad. If I knew your story, I wouldn't be mad. We spend so much time assuming that we know what's going on with each human that we come across. And so I think your question kind of answers itself, Kavita. It's empathy, it's kindness.
Yeah.
It's all the things. So I have a podcast. I interviewed this Dr. Niobe Way a couple weeks ago, and she is amazing. She's a professor down at NYU, and she's essentially studied boys and young men for 40 years. And she's like, she yells and she screams because she's so fired up about this. And I can get there too, because we also just acquired this company, Manual, which is we're really focusing on wellness on college campuses for men. Men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide, 3 times more likely to die by overdose. All the numbers But my point is, Niobe was so interesting because she said, Zach, The boys are screaming the answer. They're trying to tell us.
Yep.
It's connection. We just don't want to accept that. We want to go out and find this really scientific, really, like earth-shattering conclusion. And I think a lot of that, the answer here, Kavita, is like when someone dies by suicide, when someone dies by overdose, like that, they're dying alone. They're not dying with a community around them. So how are we as humans connecting and taking time to do that? And it seems really simple, but I'm telling you, it's a struggle right now.
It sure is.
It is. Well, I don't know if we can do justice to this topic, Zac, but would love to continue the conversation in any forum, any fashion that you'll allow us to. Zac Clark is a recovery advocate and founder and CEO of Release Recovery. Zac, I can't say this from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yo, thank you guys, because you're willing to talk to me and let me let it rip and say these words that people think are dirty and shine a light on this thing. So a lot of love.
That's our show this week. Well Now is produced and edited by Vic Whitley-Berry. Ben Richmond is Slate's Senior Director of Podcast Operations. Alicia Montgomery is Vice President of Audio. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at wellnow@slate.com.
We'd love for you to support our show by becoming a Slate Plus member. You'd get great perks like listening to Well Now ad-free and receiving bonus material from our show and a ton of other Slate podcasts. You'll also have full access to all articles on Slate's website. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday as we tackle another part of the wellness industry. I'm Kavita Patel.
And I'm Maya Feller. Thanks for listening.